Hello and welcome to coverage of the Magic Online Championship. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas, and we're ready for the second semifinal match here. And I use the term match loosely here, Luis, as we are going to be playing potentially 3 matches between these two players to decide who ultimately will end up in the finals against Niels. And the first one we're going to watch here is Modern, Jerry Thompson versus Alexander Ivanov. Jerry chose Modern as the first format. There's 3 formats. There's Modern, Standard, and Legacy. And Jerry, as a higher seed, got to choose which one they were going to play first. And the interesting thing to note here as well is that since Jerry gets to be on the play for this first one, that actually had a lot to do with why he chose Modern.
I believe so. When you're playing against a deck that has, wild Nakados in it and step links, then you really do want to be first on the board. And Jerry has a pretty decent start here.
You can see that he's suspended an Ancestral Vision. That's going to have 4 suspend counters on it, and every upkeep he gets to remove one. When they're gone, he gets to have target player draw 3 cards.
He's going to target himself is one of the keys.
This is why we have you in the
Vision.
booth, Luis. This is the hard-hitting commentary that we expect from you.
So Alexander had one of the kind of funny plays is he gets to Mishra's Bauble himself to see what his top card is, to decide whether he wants to fetch. Of course, he's got 2 different 1-drops, so I can't imagine he's not fetching regardless, but it is one of those interactions you have to think about.
Yeah, but so what he's probably more thinking about here is, does he want Inquisition or does he want to play Nakatl?
Well, it's actually subsets of both those also, which is after he decides what he wants to do, he has to decide which land he wants to get. Because he's playing a deck with many different colors of spells, 4 different colors of spells, in access to actually a ton of different options. He actually is deciding to draw Death Shadow. So,
interesting.
He did not play either of his spells on turn 1. Jerry's hand is really...
It does make his turn 2 pretty great.
It does. Jerry's hand is really propped up by this Ancestral Vision, by the way. He's got a Bolt, and he's got lands. He's got an Emrakul. So...
Awkward.
And now Jerry has to decide, does he want to play the tapped Colonnade, which looks like what he's leaning towards, or does he want to play an untapped red source to cast Bolt end of turn? Either way, he kind of gets a mana out of the deal, so it makes sense that he would want to wait. So Alexander chose to bobble himself again. He sees the step links, and let's see if he decides that's worth drawing. It looks like he's going to want to shuffle that away. So now you see he's got to decide which land does he want to get. He wants to get mountains and plains to make that Nakatl big. So something like Sacred Foundry plus Overgrown Tomb is an option. Something like Blood Crypt plus Temple Garden is an option. Those are both ways to have access to all the different colors of mana he needs. One of the big interactions here is that Mutagenic Growth is a great counter to Lightning Bolt. Alexander can play this wild Nakatl and then use Mutagenic Growth to save it. Of course,
he's going to try to clear the Lightning Bolt out here with Inquisition.
Inquisition is revealing good news for Alexander. Jerry's now on no castable spells in hand, and Alexander has a pretty quick clock here because he's going to be able to go down to 14 to cast this wild Nakatl, and he might just start playing next turn Stomping Grounds untapped, go to 12, and then just cast a Mutagenic Growth, so he's able to play this Death Shadow.
All right. Well, he's got the 3/3 wild Nakatl up. You see the counters coming off.
Anger of the Gods, a decent draw against Zoo in general, but those Mutagenic Growths are going to make it a lot worse.
And he can't cast it this turn either, just to even 1-for-1 with the Nakatl, so he's just going to have to get a Steam Vents and then pass the turn back. And Jerry Thompson has been able to stay at 20 life here, but
so
that is going to change dramatically. Whoa, Teamer Battle Rage now?
Yeah, Alexander can, if you would like, play double Mutagenic Growth, Teamer Battle Rage, hit for 14 because it's relatively safe. But if he waits a turn, then he'll be able to do a lot more damage next turn because by playing double Mutagenic Growth, the Death Shadow will become a 5/5. Then he also lost 4 life, so it'll be a 9/9.
And this is going to protect against Anger of the Gods as well, from the Nakatl's perspective here.
Paying 2 life to put a Mutagenic Growth on Nakatl and then paying 2 life to put it on Anger would stop Anger of the Gods. It looks like Alexander is going for it here. He's just going to attack for 14.
Okay. And like you said, this even if Anger of the Gods were to be cast next turn, the Death Shadow will be out of range.
Currently, yeah. So it's a 5/5 because Alexander's at 8. So Jerry's going to Anger and then go to 1 here because the Death Shadow attacks for 5.
So if he has any burn spell, any pump
Any
spell, any
fetch-
way to lose a life, and there's one right there, Bloodstained Mire is going to put him to exactly 6-6. And Alexander really quickly picks up the first game. And that's how that's supposed to go for him as far as speed, right? I mean, he's looking to just pile on damage.
He killed Jerry before Ancestral Visions unsuspended.
Yeah.
When Jerry was on the play, which is a difficult thing to do. Jerry doesn't have a ton of highly impactful sideboard cards. I mean, he has cards that are good. He has cards like, another Anger of the Gods, Celestial Purge can kill Death Shadow. That's the only thing it kills. So Jerry's not getting significantly better, though. It kills Monastery Swiftspear as well. But Jerry does have a deck that has a lot of cheap removal. Like he has 4 Lightning Bolt, 4 Path Exile, and multiple Timely Reinforcements. So even though the funny thing about Timely Reinforcements, often Alexander's going to be at lower life total than Jerry. So Alexander also not looking to completely change how his deck works. He can board in another Inquisition. He can board in some Thought Seizes. He can board out cards like Dismember. But overall, the game we saw in Game 1 is not drastically different than what we're going to see in post-board games. And it looks like Alexander's already submitted, and Jerry's deciding, does he want to keep Emrakul and Nahiri? And it looks like he's going to keep that package in. Even a card like Electrolyze, you'd think a cheap burn spell would be good against Zoo, but Alexander's creatures are just too big.
Alex is patiently waiting there on the right-hand side. He submitted his list a while ago.
Yeah, he's just thinking of how he's going to pay life next game.
All right, and it looks like we're back in business here, so we'll jump back down to the feature match for the second game. Again, Modern is going to kick things off. Whoever wins this one, it doesn't matter who wins this one, we're going to get a second match. That's right, an entire match of Constructed. And that one is going to be chosen by Alexander Ivanov. And he does have to choose one of the 2 remaining. They can't choose the same thing twice.
And this
Street Wraith off the top there.
Alexander end of turn cycling. So this
found a 1-drop.
Fighting Swiftspear is very good, especially since he gets to trigger prowess with Mishra's Bauble. But Jerry's hand does line up pretty well against Alexander's. Jerry once again has the visions, and this time he can spell snare the turn 2 Tarmogoyf and then Celestial Purge the Swiftspear and end up in a spot where, under the current set of cards we see from Alexander, survive until that visions resolves. Though Alexander is going to use this bauble, and he's going to be able to draw an extra card here, so he gets to see that Jerry has a Serum Visions coming up.
Okay, just attack for 2, drop Jerry down to 18. Again, every upkeep we're going to see these suspend counters coming off of Ancestral Vision, though you mentioned it last time Alexander was able to just outright race the Ancestral Vision. He killed Jerry before it even came off as suspend. It is a slow card, even when you suspend on turn 1. That's 4 counters.
I don't think that's going to happen this game, though. Alexander has access to some quick draws. Jerry has some interesting land play here. Does he want to play Colonnade tapped and leave up Spell Snare? Does he want to play Fetch Land and leave up Spell Snare and cast Serum Visions? Looks like he's opting to just go Fetch Land and then leave up both his lands, and now he can cast Spell Snare if Alexander plays a 2-drop, and if Alexander doesn't play a 2-drop, he can just sack Flooded Strand for a Plains and just cast Celestial Purge on the Monastery Swiftspear. I wonder if Alexander's going to play around Spell Pierce here, or rather Spell Snare here, by just playing another Swiftspear and then starting to cast some mutagenic growths. It will work out pretty well for him, and he knows Jerry has 3 Spell Snares in the deck.
So get in for a lot of damage with that. He decides not to, though, just going to attack with the Swiftspear.
Yeah, so Jerry's going to take 1 to 17, and then Alexander's going to play this Tarmogoyf, and Jerry's going to be pretty happy to Spell Snare. And now that means he gets to sack Flooded Strand for a tapped dual land.
Sort. Yeah, okay. Well, this sequence worked out well for Jerry. He took minimal damage, just 1 from the Swiftspear, 1 from his land, and he gets to fix his mana up a little bit better as well. Tick-tock, Ancestral Vision falls to 2 counters.
So now Jerry can go Serum Visions and then play the Cascade Bluffs, having Remand plus Celestial Purge up, so with Visions on 2. So I think Jerry's in decent shape here. Alexander's deck's very explosive. I mean, if Alexander draws like an Inquisition and then gets to go like Swiftspear, Inquisition you, attack, cast some mutagenic growth, Jerry could take a lot of damage. But
is Remand very good in this matchup?
It's not particularly good.
Everything costs 1 or 0, it feels.
Yeah, Jerry, now he sided out some Remands, and I think Remand was like among the last cards he kept in the deck.
I see.
Part of it
is
that Jerry doesn't have a lot of cards that he would want to board in. He's already playing main deck a lot of the best cards in the format against this deck, like Bolt, Path, and Timely Reinforcements.
Now, is Jerry considering if he would actually rather play the Colonnade? Yeah, he did. In fact, he decided to play the Colonnade.
Yeah, so he's going to play a 1-mana play regardless. It's whether it's Serum Visions or a tapped land, either way.
I see. So he used up a mana by playing a tap land effectively. Another land off the top here for Ivanov. He still only has the Monastery Swiftspear on the board and an additional one in his hand for threats. He hasn't found an Acatl or a Death Shadow or something like that.
No, this looks very good for Jerry. And Ivanov actually deciding not to pay life on Sacred Foundry, which has to be a good sign for Jerry. He sees that and is like, okay, yeah, that works. Also, because Ivanov fetched first, if Jerry remands the Swiftspear, Ivanov can't replay it this turn.
Yeah, wow. So Jerry, what's the downside if Jerry does remand here?
The downside is he doesn't get to cast Celestial Purge, and Celestial Purge removes one of those Swiftspears forever, whereas remand just sets the problem back by a turn, and next turn Ivanov just gets to play it. So
he is going to favor going for the Celestial Purge here, it looks like. Now, does he just take the 2 damage? Yes, he does. But now he'll play it.
Yeah, he's definitely going to use the mana this turn, but by taking an extra point only, it's not even that much. He gets to, first of all, prevent Ivanov from using like mutagenic growth, and second of all, play around a potential other threat like an Acatl.
Okay, so Serum Vision is down to 1 counter left, though he did draw another one for the turn, which is not really what you want to see at the middle part of the game. But he's going to cast Serum Visions to find himself, well,
yeah,
a relic.
He put 2 lands on the bottom, so
okay.
He wasn't interested in either of those cards, and now he can play Relic or Suspended Visions, but I assume he's going to want to leave Remand up, since he just wants to not die this turn and draw 3 fresh cards off Ancestral.
Yeah. So he can only do one of those 1-drops and still leave up Remand.
Yeah.
You said it, though. This is looking good for Jerry because it seems that he is going to be able to resolve that Ancestral Vision, and that's just going to give him such a huge advantage next turn. The Relic of Progenitus, good at keeping Tarmogoyf at bay.
Yeah, it makes Tarmogoyf a little smaller. Or a lot smaller. That's basically its only function here.
Also, it's just cheap. He can actually just do things. This deck is so fast.
So Ivanov can attack for 7 here, and this might be his last opportunity to get a Swiftspear through. But it's just not that effective. Taking Jerry to 7 isn't really going to win you the game.
No, so this is not looking good for Alexander Ivanov. He had a pretty explosive play in the first turn, but here we go. Ancestral Vision coming off of Suspend and going on the stack, targeting Jerry, and
oh, there we go.
Bang! Look at that.
Now if you're in Jerry's seat, you're feeling pretty good because you have Path for the Swiftspear, Snapcaster Path for whatever else goes on. You can suspend another Visions if you'd like, and you have Remand up. So Jerry's got a lot of answers. You can like Snapcaster Spell Snare if Ivanov draws Tarmogoyf. So
yeah, that's just absurd.
Yeah, you're feeling pretty content with the way the situation is.
Yeah, Kenji's eating lunch like 2 rooms over, and I heard him say "game."
You just made that up for effect.
Well, he interrupted his sandwich to do it.
There we go.
Echo.
Gitaxian Probe will make the Swiftspear a little bigger, and will show Alexander the bad news, which is that Jerry has access to multiple removal spells in hand.
He had to expect that. When your opponent draws 4 cards in one turn, it's like it's not going to be good news for you very often. Really, the problem, though, for Alexander is just his hand has been so threat light. Just the 2 Swiftspears is all he's been able to muster as far as attackers go.
Yeah, the fact that Jerry was able to Spell Snare the Tarmogoyf and Celestial Purge the other Swiftspear just puts Jerry in a much better spot. He may actually end up Snapcastering the Celestial Purge here in order to just have a Snapcaster in play and kill that Swiftspear.
And look at the clock. I mean, we always talk about this in this matchup, but this Death Shadow aggro deck doing all that damage to itself adds up very quickly. And, it's a Snapcaster and a Bolt away, very often from just being dead. I mean, it is part of the primary game plan, and it accepts the risk in saying, okay, fine, if you do turn the corner on the game, I'm just going to die quickly. But that does happen. He's all the way down to 8.
Right. The Death Shadow aggro deck is not one for comebacks.
Right.
it reduces its life total to the point where Death Shadow is an incredibly powerful card. It's a 1-mana 6/6 or bigger. But the downside is if your opponent stabilizes, it's also like, wait, you're at 6? Or attacking the Celestial Colonnade.
Yeah. Which Jerry cannot do here. He does get to crack into the Snapcaster if he'd like. And he has his choice of playing Nahiri and leaving up a Path to Exile, or just leaving up Path and Remand and playing a Relic of Progenitus. And he's going to go for Nahiri.
Yeah, the Remand is, like you said, not actually going to stop Alexander from playing his cards, so leaving up Path is about as much disruption as you need.
Yeah, and it looks like Jerry sees the same, and he finds a nice one, a little Spell Snare there to go with his Path to Exile. If Jerry finds an untapped land next turn, he can attack for lethal.
Yeah, and I think that there's a good chance Jerry, well, I was going to say cycles Relic to try to do that, but Alexander just is ready to go to Game 3.
All right, so Game 3 indeed, and pretty cool. We've got a chance to see kind of what both decks are trying to do here. Resolve and Ancestral Vision is plan A for Jerry, and he was able to do that in the second game, but not the first, even though he did suspend one on turn 1. And his opponent, Alexander, had one of those explosive, you take 14 here, and I'll find the rest of the damage in a turn or two. Games in the first game, second game, nothing like that. He had one of his threats neutralized, and then the other two eventually killed as well.
Yeah, Jerry basically just needs to draw his 1-mana removal spells. Like, his success is going to hinge if he can draw a bunch of Bolts, Paths, and Snapcasters, then I think he'll be in good shape. If he draws too many of his Serum Visions and Nahiris, then he's going to have trouble. Though Timely Reinforcements is one of the cards Jerry wants to see the most. Jerry has one of those tough sideboard slots right now where it's not that he has so many good cards, he's deciding which ones to play. It's like he has to leave a couple like kind of medium cards in his deck. He's just forced to.
Alexander had his game plan already. He's reviewing Jerry's deck list here, but he submitted almost immediately again. So Game 3 it is. This is in the first match. Modern, as it turned out, Jerry's choice.
I think Alexander might have to mold a 5 here. He's already molded a 6. Jerry now deciding what he wants to mulligan. He's got the turn 3 anger, but the rest of his hand is just not that impressive. So Jerry is going to keep.
He's leaning on that Serum Visions a little.
Yeah, he's going to be able to play Serum Visions to try to find a Bolt on turn 2 and then an anger on turn 3.
So speaking of leaning on cards, Alexander's leaning on this
Wow.
Gitaxian Probe pretty hard. He has no threats in hand whatsoever.
Yeah, Alexander kept this hand, which with a Scry does get to see an extra card, but
no,
it's going to be really hard for him to win from this spot. Look, his hand is 5 lands in a Temur Battle Rage.
Right.
That's not good.
That is not a good and hard-hitting commentary here from Luis Scott Vargas. This is why we have him in the booth.
That's actually not entirely true. It's one of the reasons. And Snapcaster Mage off the top for Jerry is, it's not Lightning Bolt or Path to Exile, but it does mean if he draws one of those cards, he's in even better shape.
What does Jerry think? Is Jerry thinking about Tarmogoyf here as the number one thing he doesn't want to see? Because, no 1-drop, no Nacatl and no Swift Spear from Alexander must have him thinking, well, that's good news, but what does he have in his hand?
I would if you're Jerry, I would assume a Tarmogoyf is coming, but even though Jerry sees a Spell Snare, he's going to have to put it on the bottom because Tarmogoyf would just come out on turn 2.
Okay. Well, Mishra's Bauble gives him a little bit of hope.
Well, it's a 1-turn delay, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
next turn.
It is tough. Jerry did keep a Path to Exile on top, which is what he needed. So,
all right.
I mean,
now he's got Path with the Snapcaster in his hand as well.
So to recap, Jerry drew the Path, which is what he was looking for, by far the most out of his deck, Path or Bolt, and Alexander just drew a Mishra's Bauble and some lands. So Jerry didn't actually even need the Path quite yet. Alexander's going to have a hard time assembling a threat this game. No, there is a Wild Nacatl.
Okay, but like you said, that delay hurting him even further.
So Alexander gets to play Wild Nacatl. Jerry is going to just... He could path at end of turn, but he doesn't actually need to do that quite yet.
Gitaxian Probe, kind of interesting in the build here for Alexander. It serves a few purposes. It makes the deck smaller effectively. It also gets his life total lower. You can see Alex has done a great job of that. He's already down to 10.
Well, yeah, if the goal is to lose the most life, he is winning that race.
He's crushing it.
Unfortunately for him, he doesn't have the Death Shadow that would make that relevant.
Right.
And he doesn't actually have a way to get any threats through because Jerry has Path and Snapcaster. He can kill Alexander's first couple threats. So Jerry, he can sack Flooded Strand for just a tap dual in and just wait on the Path. He could cast Anger of the Gods here, but one downside to doing that is it opens the door for him to lose to Mutagenic Growth, Nikotl, untap, become immense Teamer Battle Rage. Something just nonsense like that.
Yeah.
There's just no reason to take a big risk, even if it's a multi-card combo. So, worth noting, though, that Jerry's not found a card advantage engine. He hasn't found an Ancestral or an Ahiri. He actually has kind of a lot of lands, so Jerry isn't closing out this game. And Alexander has a very low land count deck. The evidence so far notwithstanding.
Yeah.
So that if Alexander just draws 3 spells in a row, we could have a very close game here. Just this opening part is not going well for Alexander.
Let's see if he hits a threat here. Well, he did. He found another wild Nikotl. Unfortunately for him, Jerry has a couple of answers in hand for it already.
Yeah, and
now are we going to see Jerry just Snapcaster
path
and just start attacking?
I think so.
Like,
and
he's at 10.
Alexander doesn't have another basic to get either.
Oh, really?
He just got the one basic forest. Not that
and
land,
Jerry will know that, right?
Not that land number 6 really helps. Well,
so Jerry did not go for it, but kind of he found a timely reinforcement.
I really like going for timely here because timely reinforcements puts a pretty big clock on Alexander. You're never going to gain the life off timely because of Alexander's deck. So looks like Jerry's just going to start with anger here, and he's got Dispel for a potential Mutagenic Growth if he needs to.
As it turns out, he does not. Alexander continues to thin out his deck with his fetch lands. He drops down to 9, though. Yeah, there's a Thoughtseize now.
It can take Snapcaster Mage.
Okay.
And that leaves Jerry with just a timely reinforcements. Yeah, that's not. It's not exactly the game plan Alexander drew up, but he's got a more of a chance now.
Alex is at 7.
Yeah, Jerry's just going to start to use Celestial Colonnade as soon as he can here. Oh, Path was a really good draw.
Wow,
because
that's nice.
now, even if Alexander does draw a creature, Jerry has an answer. Yeah, Alexander's draws have not been cooperating. He's drawn a Stranded Teamer Battle Rage, a Lone Lightning Bolt against a deck that has very few bolt targets, and 2 creatures total.
Yeah, so now we're going to see Celestial Colonnade get activated. That's going to drop Alexander Ivanov down to 3 life, and Jerry even gets to leave up Path to Exile.
And Dispel. Oh, it looks like Jerry's just going to go with Nahiri.
Interesting.
When you're discarding timely reinforcements against the aggro deck, you're usually in pretty decent shape.
You're fine, yeah. There's a Tarmogoyf.
So one compelling reason to potentially mulligan Alexander's opening hand, it was 4 land Teamer Battle Rage Gitaxian Probe, is that lands number 2 or 3 and 4 aren't particularly useful. So
they're almost dead anyway.
So that's almost a 4-card hand in terms of value. So even though Alexander drew poorly after that, it still was worth noting that that the opening hand was risky.
I was thinking that Jerry would go for the Celestial Colonnade kill, the 2-turn Celestial Colonnade kill, but he now has Nahiri on 8 loyalty. That is ultimate range for Nahiri.
It is 1 turn slower than the Colonnade kill, but it does leave.
You get a lot of style
but
points.
it lets Jerry filter through his deck and see 2 additional cards. So and he doesn't have to tap out. So it is a little safer. Is Emrakul going to finish all of our our quarterfinal matches here?
It might be the case. Jerry's going to play a Relic of Progenitus. This is going to give him a little bit of insurance against, Tarmogoyf, or even just draw him a card at some point.
Yeah, mostly just a cycler.
Yep. And he's going to immediately crack it here, in fact.
He wants to hit his land drops.
And it's a Mutagenic Growth. I wouldn't be surprised just to see Alex concede here.
Well,
the writing's on the wall, right?
He has to verify that Jerry has Emrakul left in his deck.
Fair, good point.
Oh, he also gets to Lightning Bolt Nahiri, but Jerry has the Dispel for that, which
Indeed.
Alexander knows, but he's kind of forced into doing this.
Yeah.
Look at that 6 sideboard Dispel.
Dude, are we really going to see...
we're not going to see Emrakul.
We were going to see Emrakul, but we didn't have to. Jerry Thompson picks up the first semifinal over Alexander Ivanov in impressive fashion. And that's going to put him 1 match win away from the finals, though the players are now going to decide, and by the players I actually mean Alex is now going to decide what format he wants to play for this next semifinal match that we have, he has a choice of either playing in Legacy or Standard.
Right, he can either play his Loam Green Sun Zenith Knight of the Reliquary deck against Jerry's Shard of the Sultai deck in Legacy, or he can play Goggles Ramp against green-white tokens in Standard.
What do you think?
I assume he will choose Legacy because I think that matchup's a little better, and being on the play seems to matter more in the older format. But either way, Alexander, if he wants to win, he has to play both formats. So he's going to get to play both formats if he's going to come out here with a victory.
Right, and so it's really a play-draw situation. Well, Jerry Thompson, one match away from the finals here at the Magic Online Championship, and he's standing with Brian David Marshall.
Thanks, Marshall. I'm here with Jerry Thompson. Jerry, what was the decision between choosing to go Modern in the first format?
I think both I need help more in that format, and the die roll matters more because I have cards like Ancestral Vision in my deck.
So you really want to be on the play there?
Yeah, I mean, it does matter a lot in Standard and Legacy as well, but I think me being on the draw in already such a bad matchup where his deck is really fast-paced and I'm the one that's, trying to keep my head above water, basically. Like, the games play out so much better for me when he goes creature and I can just remove it immediately with my mana instead of just, like, him playing creature, maybe getting a hit in with a Swift Spear or something, and then I have to react to him constantly. It's just really bad for me.
So the format next, Jonathan chose is Standard. How does your Standard matchup play out?
I think the matchup is good, but die roll, it can get away from me. I also need to draw my Gideons a lot. I think that's really important. His deck is a little bit different than most of the other Goggle Ramps we've seen. He has like Creature's main deck, which can kind of pose some issues if he's able to like clear my blockers and attack my Planeswalkers. Most of the other Goggles decks can't do that. And yeah, I think that's about it. I don't know.
All right, Jerry Thompson, he's one match away from playing in the Magic Online Championship Finals.
Friends, welcome back to the booth here at the Magic Online Championships. We just saw Jerry Thompson win his first match over Alexander Ivanov, and we're going to move to Standard here, where Jerry's playing the green-white tokens list, and Ivanov is on the red-green goggles ramp, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so we've got the same matchup that Steve Rubin and Brad Nelson played in the top 8 of the last Pro Tour. We've got a Goggles ramp deck that's using Pyromancer's Goggles, card draw like Magmatic Insight, and Tormenting Voice to ramp into big cards like a World Breaker and Dragonlord Atarka. This also has 3 Tireless Trackers in the main deck, so a pretty cool deck, and one that Alexander hopes will be able to go over the top of Jerry's green-white tokens deck. So we've got Jerry on the deck that won the Pro Tour, so he's able to play Planeswalkers like Nissa and Gideon. He's able to play Avacyn, sometimes flip Avacyn by playing a Hangerback Walker for 0, and kind of pressure the green-red goggles deck. Westfield Abbey kind of important in this matchup too, especially in concert with cards like Hangerback Walker and Nissa that can generate a bunch of tokens.
Yeah, I know you were mentioning on LSV's Keys that green-white tokens is the go-to deck, the clear headliner. And we saw a lot of people play green-white here at the Magic Online Championships. I know Alexander has some game in him, though. We were watching some of the matches yesterday, and he was able to cast Pyromancer's Goggles into huge Fall of the Titans, sometimes for X equals 5, and then it copied it, and he was just able to deal with multiple Planeswalkers a turn while also hitting the opponent for tons of damage. So looking forward to this matchup. It should be pretty good. Remember, Jerry T's up a game, so if he wins this Standard match, he's going to be going on to the finals.
Yeah, well, he'll be facing Niels Norlander, and this is the format. I was talking to Jerry before the top 4 started. This is the format where he feels the most advantaged of these 3 matches. So this is kind of his opportunity to just close this out, because the green-white deck has cards like Gideon. It's one of the best cards in the format against the green-red ramp deck, and he's got cards like Avacyn, which is very threatening, especially if the green-red deck is trying to play like any sort of main phase removal. You just Avacyn it in response.
Nice, yeah, and in Jerry's interview just there, he was mentioning how important it's going to be for him to hit those Planeswalkers. So, well, with 4 Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, 4 Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, do you think he's going to aggressively mull for those?
I don't think he's going to mull too aggressively, because it's still Standard. You still have to just keep a hand of like lands and spells. Like he's got Sylvan Advocates and Hangerbacks to play and whatnot. But they are a big part of his success. If he can go turn 3 Nissa, turn 4 Gideon, I think he's a pretty big favorite in those games. Jerry also has 2 main deck Evolutionary Leaps, which is not always the case for this deck. Which it can work out well against a deck that's trying to kill all your creatures.
Yeah, and with resilient threats like you were mentioning, Archangel Avacyn, Hangerback Walker. He should be able to, well, hopefully do some good work against the Standard of Alexander Ivanov. Let's look at some of the legacy decks, though. And if these players do go to a match 3, these are the decks that will be running Jerry Thompson on Shardless Sultai. What's so great about this deck?
It's trying to combine Shardless Agent and Ancestral Vision, but more than that, it's just trying to deal with the opponent's all of its threats, its game plan. It's got Thoughtseize, Abrupt Decay, Force of Will to deal with whatever your opponent is trying to present, and then it has Deathrite Shaman to speed it up. This is just one of the most powerful creatures in Magic. It's the 1/2 that accelerates mana and starts chipping away at your opponent's life total or gaining you life. Tarmogoyf is the most efficient card, and then Baleful Strix is a nice little 2-for-1. So the deck is very mid-range and is very good at grinding out long matches.
And what's Alexander playing over in Legacy?
He's got a Punishing Knight deck. This is kind of interesting. 4-colored, like Life from the Loam deck. It's got a ton of different combos. It's got, Life from the Loam with Thespian Stage and Dark Depths. It's got Knight of the Reliquary to search up all these different one-of lands. It's got Green Sun Zenith that can go get the Gaddock Teague, Knight of the Reliquary, Scavenging Ooze, or Dryad Arbor. And it's got Punishing Fire plus Grove of the Burn Willows, along with main deck Chalice of the Void. There's just a lot going on here.
Yeah, it almost looks like the lands package deck. I mean, you see the Dark Depths and the Thespian Stage, of course, but Grove of the Burn Willows, and as you mentioned, Punishing Fire, just able to do some real work, especially since a lot of Jerry's creatures are small. I mean, obviously, Tarmogoyf and Deathrite Shaman are two of the better ones, but Shardless Agent, Baleful Strix, and Deathrite Shaman can all be killed by the Punishing Fire.
Yeah, and this deck has a lot of different game plans. It can try to lock the opponent out with Chalice of the Void. It can, as you said, use Punishing Fire to kill all your opponent's creatures. It also has reliable amounts of Gaddock Teagues, and then it can assemble various land combos with Knight of the Reliquary, as well as having card advantage engines like Dark Confidant and Liliana. So this is a very interesting deck. It's going to be interesting to see how it matches up against Jerry's mid-range deck if they make it to a third match.
Yeah, of course, this is the Legacy decks, and for right now, we are going to be playing Standard. If Jerry wins, he'll be going on to the finals. If Alexander wins, we'll be playing the Legacy decks you guys just saw on screen. Standard is setting up, though. The players are getting ready. Is this Standard basically the Standard that you saw at the last Pro Tour?
It's two decks from the top 8, so it's clearly decks that people were playing at the Pro Tour. It's they've been evolved a little bit, both with Evolutionary Leap and with main deck Tireless Trackers. So it's like the players have been tuning and testing them, but these are similar. I mean, the standard metagame is fairly well defined at this point. There's a lot of different decks. We saw a ton of different decks in this event, and this is just one of the classic battles between what I believe is the best deck in Standard, Green-White Tokens, and one of the better decks in Standard, Red-Green Ramp.
Yeah, and if you guys are just tuning in, of course, this is the second semifinals here at the Magic Online Championships. We have Jerry Thompson versus Alexander Ivanov. Currently, we're waiting to see who's going to win and meet Niels Norlander in the finals. Niels took his matches 2-0 rather.
Yeah,
in spectacular
he
fashion.
even kind of it was a bit of an upset. He defeated Jonathan in a legacy match, which is Jonathan's a specialist of that format, with the Sneak and Show mirrors, and it was a pretty interesting match. I would highly recommend watching it.
Yeah. Looks like the players are ready, though, so let's go down to the standard match between Jerry Thompson and Alexander Ivanov. And here we are. You can see the players, Jerry Thompson on the left, Alexander on your right. And we are underway. Looks like both players are ready. We'll see what kind of opening hands we can get here. Green-White Tokens versus Red-Green Goggles Ramp. It looks like Alexander's on the play here. Decent hand, Magmatic Insight, Tracker, and Chandra versus Jerry's opposing Den Protector, Hangerback Walker, Double Command, and a Westvale Abbey.
Yeah, it's a solid opening hand for Alexander. He gets to filter some with Magmatic Insight. He'd love to find like a Nissos Pilgrimage, something along those lines. Hitting a Dark Dwellers plus a Kozilek's Return is not really what he was hoping for, and Jerry just drew a Gideon, which is exactly what Jerry was hoping for. Jerry wouldn't mind a Nissa, but Gideon would be quite a good surprise.
Archangel Avis in the draw for Jerry this turn. He's just going to lead with a Hangerback Walker, X=1.
Jerry needing a fourth land. Actually, both players, not quite as many lands for them as they would like, though Alexander did draw a fourth one here.
Yeah, that Tireless Tracker probably going to go out of control unless Jerry wants to use a Dromoka's command here.
Jerry almost assuredly is going to. He gets 3 tokens out of the deal. The downside is that Alexander does have that Kozilek's Return, but it still ends up being a fine exchange.
Yeah, and so Dromoka's command, using its ability to put a 1/1 counter on the Hangerback Walker and fighting the Tireless Tracker before it could get any value. It's going to give Jerry 3 tokens, but we do know that Kozilek's Return is in the hand of Alexander.
Big draw step for Jerry. He would have really liked to see Plains. If he was able to go Plains Gideon, then he would have a lot of initiative here. But instead, he's going to be able to attack for 3. Alexander could return them or just take 3. And then Alexander, it's on him to draw a land. Both players are 1 mana away from having some really good plays.
So is this a scenario where you might want to just use the Kozilek's return, or are you going to wait until end of turn here?
I think waiting until end of turn is going to work out much better for Alexander. Now I have a hard time imagining he'll pass up the opportunity.
So Den Protector morphed, but Alexander with a quick Kozilek's return.
And instead of drawing a land, he drew a Magmatic Insight, which has been my experience with that card. When you need to draw a land and you draw Magmatic Insight, it's like Magic is mocking you.
Of course, you need to discard a land to cast the Magmatic Insight, so Alexander unable to do that. Oath of Nissa does find a Canopy Vista for Jerry, who does develop out a Sylvan Advocate as well. All right, well, that's a pseudo land. Traverse the Ulvenwald.
It actually has Delirium now because there's exactly instant sorcery land creature in Alexander's graveyard, but he's still just going to use it to find a land, I would imagine. And he gets to use it to find a Drownyard Temple, which works out really nicely for him. So now Alexander gets to not only make his land drop, he gets to return Drownyard Temple end of turn with its activated ability, and then play an Atarka next turn. So that was huge.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons the deck is running so many of the Drownyard Temple. It just has so much nice synergy between Magmatic Insight, Tormenting Voice, or any other way to get it in your graveyard. All right, a bash in from the Sylvan Advocate's going to make Alexander fall down to 15. Gideon Ally of Zendikar, the follow-up play, and immediately producing a 2/2 white knight ally creature. Funny how the Drownyard Temple kind of acts like a ramp spell in this deck. In fact,
it's a key
land.
part of this of how the deck is built. You're exactly right. It is a ramp spell, and so now Alexander can just go Atarka, kill your Gideon if he wants. He can also Chandra to wipe out the Advocate and the Knight, though that then gets attacked by Gideon. So imagine he's leaning towards playing an Atarka here. He could also Dark Dwellers here, but Atarka killing Gideon is pretty safe.
Yeah, Jerry looking at 3 Archangel Avacyn in his hand. Not as exciting, especially when you don't have that 5th land. And Alexander is going to go ahead and just take care of the Gideon.
And Jerry doesn't even have an answer for Atarka, so none of his creatures are big enough to fight it. He doesn't have any of his removal spells like Declaration of Stone, so it's going to be tough for him to deal with an 8/8 just on the board.
Yeah, another Sylvan Advocate is all Jerry T can do, holding up Dramoka's command, but that is not exactly as relevant when your opponent has an 8/8 flying trample on the battlefield. So is this a turn we might see Chandra come down just to wipe the board of Jerry?
It does seem pretty safe to do that. You do have to worry about Dramoka's command a little bit, but if you wipe Jerry's board here, then it's really hard for him to come back, even if he has a way to kill Atarka.
All right, 6 mana and a Chandra. Flamecaller entering the battlefield on Alexander Ivanov's side. We'll see what he wants to do with it. And it looks like he is going to -3 loyalty on Chandra, dealing 3 damage to each creature. And is this a scenario where Jerry just wants to save one of his Sylvan Advocates?
I think he's forced to, even though it's not a particularly exciting play from Jerry. He's going to have to put a +1 counter on a Sylvan Advocate, and the other mode is essentially wasted. He can have his other Advocate fight Atarka, but it's not gonna kill it.
All right, and that is what we are going to see. Dramoka's command saving one of the Advocates, making Alexander's sack an enchantment he doesn't currently own.
How do you sack an enchantment you don't currently own?
Well, you try to at least. Oh, Atarka didn't attack there, actually.
Yeah, I wanted to keep Chandra alive, and Jerry doesn't have a way to remove the Atarka. Instead, he's got 3 uncastable Avacyns.
Yeah, Evolutionary Leap a little bit poor here. If it was on the battlefield earlier, Jerry would have been able to sack some of his creatures and find some more, but looks like Alexander is starting to run away with this game. Goblin Dark Dwellers in hand can do some nice work. And in fact, Chandra could even discard his hand and draw a new one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Alexander goes Goggles and then 0 Chandra. He could also go Goggles, Land, Dark Dwellers, and I suppose he doesn't have that much he wants to replay. He could also Nissa's Pilgrimage and then 0 Chandra with more cards in hand.
Looks like Alexander's taking his time to think about one of those lines.
Yeah, he's got a wealth of options here, so I think regardless of what he ends up doing, he's going to be in pretty good shape.
Jerry again just staring at 3 Archangel Avacyn in hand. Even if he draws a 5th land untapped, Archangel Avacyn doesn't seem like it's too good on this board.
No, the Avacyn can block Atarka, but she does have trample still, so Atarka will trample over for some damage, and if Atarka stays back, Jerry's not really attacking through her. So Avacyn is still a decent card, and you can trigger to flip her by sacking the Advocate to Evolutionary Leap, but even flipping Avacyn isn't going to end the game or anything even close to it.
All right, looks like doing a little pump fake there. And remember, Jerry Thompson is up a match currently over Alexander Ivanov, so even if Jerry loses this one, they will be going to a match 3 in this second semifinals. All right, so Chandra's going to plus, producing 2 3/1 elemental tokens.
And Alexander's just going to clock Jerry. Hit Jerry for 11 here. And then can follow up with like Dark Dwellers plus Kozilek's Return actually now will kill the Sylvan Advocate if Alexander is interested in doing that.
It looks like he's going to start off with Anissa's Pilgrimage, which does, in fact, have Spell Mastery currently. Get a good look at that there. And that's a lot of nice land in hand for Chandra fodder.
Yeah, next turn Chandra's 0, even though I suspect she's just going to +1 next turn. Actually, I suspect there won't be a next turn because Jerry is unlikely to decide he can win this game.
Yeah, and in fact, any combination of Dragon Lord Atarka and any other creature will be lethal, or Goblin Dark Dwellers plus 2 elementals will be lethal next turn. It looks like he's going to go with the Magmatic Insight flashback instead.
Yeah, and remember that Magmatic Insight does still require the additional cost even when Dark Dwellers. So one reason for Alexander to not play Insight this turn is that if he draws into Fall of the Titans, it's a cheap Surge enabler. Though, again, I don't think the game is going to come down to that, but it is worth noting.
All right, Jerry's going to go ahead and use Evolutionary Leap to sacrifice his Sylvan Advocate and get a Hangerback Walker from his library. But a Dromoka's Command off the top is not going to be good enough, and Alexander's going to take the first game here over Jerry T. All right, let's take a look at their sideboard. Jerry has some good options. 2 Declaration in Stone. A Clip Wings doesn't seem too awful versus like the Dragon Lord Atarka.
Yeah, Jerry also could bring in something like Secure the Wastes if he wants to enable Westvale Abbey, but overall he's not looking to change all that much. Dromoka's Command is not the best card in this matchup because Alexander's creatures are so big that fighting them is not as effective. It does counter a Kozilek's Return, which is nice with the damage prevention ability. Alexander can bring in Draconic Roar and Goblin Dark Dwellers. Draconic Roar has some amount of ability to fight Planeswalkers if he can have a dragon in hand, but it still is not. It's not a silver bullet. We're not talking about sideboard cards here that completely swing the matchup. Again, it's more tuning than it is boarding in specific hate cards.
Both players looking at each other's deck lists as well. We'll see what they want to do. Who do you think is favored post sideboard here?
I do think green-white's still ahead post-board, just because I think that fundamentally the matchup is in its favor, and the sideboard cards don't change that all that much. But again, this is standard. We're not talking huge swings in the matchup here. It's not like Jerry's an 80% favorite, regardless of what happens. So, the both players are making their decks a little bit better, but they're not changing them drastically.
All right, looks like the players are ready. Sideboards are a go, and we are going to go to a game 2 here between Jerry Thompson and Alexander Ivanov in their second match, which is standard. Take a look at their players' openings hands here. And what do you see, Luis?
A lot of Hangerback Walkers. I think it's a fine hand from Jerry, especially since Oath of Nissa can find another land. But it's a hand devoid of Planeswalkers and does not have a third land except for he has to Oath into it, which makes him less likely to Oath into a Planeswalker. Alexander's hand is fine, too. Just Fiery Impulse into some Nissa's Pilgrimages. I don't think you can turn down a good ramp spell here. I imagine Alexander will be looking to keep his hand, whereas Jerry is still considering.
Okay, and Jerry mulliganing down to a hand that just needs a few more land to really get going. Sylvan Advocate, Nissa, Gideon Ally of Zendikar, and a Secure the Waste are pretty much what he's looking for. So if he can find a third land.
Yeah, this is a perfect hand for Jerry. He did have to scry a Dromoka's Command to the bottom, but if Jerry can find land and cast Nissa into Gideon, again, I think he's in very good shape.
Well, another Nissa, not exactly what Jerry Thompson had in mind, but he does have a play in the Sylvan Advocate.
And this next draw step is going to be a big one.
There it is. Forest off the top for Jerry Thompson, and wow, he gets to cast Nissa Voice of Zendikar right on curve after playing that Sylvan Advocate. Things are starting to look on the up and up.
So Jerry is really hoping to draw 4th land, but even if he doesn't now, he can go like Nissa, make a plant. Next turn, he can make to give both creatures ++1, or secure the waste first, and then give his creatures ++1. Just not worry about Kozilek's return. Whereas Alexander does not have a good Fiery Impulse target because targeting the Advocate doesn't do anything, and targeting the plant is just not exciting. So now he's going to cast Pilgrimage, and I don't know that he's going to be able to get to Chandra in time if Jerry draws a 4th land. If Jerry misses on lands, then Chandra is going to have a pretty big impact here.
And the last 2 draw steps for Alexander, Chandra Flamecrawler, and a land.
There's the 4th land. So now Jerry is going to get to play Gideon. He's rewarded for mulliganing.
Just like he drew it up.
So now I imagine make a knight, -2 Nissa, attack for 4 damage, and then have a significant board presence for next turn.
And this is all on turn 4, ladies and gentlemen. Alexander can do nothing but look at the spells in his hand and wish they were a little bit better.
that sounds like most games of Magic. So Alexander can get Spell Mastery by casting Nissa's Pilgrimage. Then he has these 3 damage Fiery Impulses, which can kill the Knight and the Plant, or both of them combined could kill Sylvan Advocate. That still leaves Alexander facing down 2 Planeswalkers. And next turn, Jerry gets to do things like main phase Secure the Waste, minus Nissa, or plus Gideon, minus Nissa, and then set up a second Nissa. And it's going to be tough for Alexander to come back, because Chandra, even a turn 5 Chandra is not going to be able to sweep the board here.
Yeah. Jerry got to be wary of those scary burn spells, but right now things are looking pretty good for him with 2 Planeswalkers on the battlefield. Bevy of creatures. And like you said, Alexander's going to go ahead and just cast the Nissa's Pilgrimage, hold up 2 Fiery Impulse with Spell Mastery.
Which again have not a ton of different targets. They can kill the 2 tokens that Jerry made for free, but he's not able to kill Sylvan Advocate without double targeting. And
Another land off the top for Jerry. Makes that Secure the Waste very potent.
so Nissa's Gideon's plussing, Nissa's minusing. Now Nissa can minus again.
All right, a Fiery Impulse in response is going to take care of that Knight Ally token, but Alexander's still under extreme pressure here.
And the second Fiery Impulse, it can kill the plant token, but that's just not all that relevant. Jerry can also play another Nissa and minus Nissa here. Still not quite lethal, but just tons of damage.
Oh, actually, I think that is lethal, isn't it?
Well, you can Fiery Impulse the plant
sure.
token in response, and that leaves Gideon doing 7 and the Advocate doing 5.
Advocate bigger than it would be if it had 2 lands, or rather 6 lands on the battlefield.
And now Alexander can cast Magmatic Insight and hope for something, or he can cast Chandra and be unable to deal with this threat.
Yeah, Magmatic Insight into Fallen Titans would actually save him. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Sylvan Advocate's a 5/6. Never mind.
It would be close. It would take out the Gideon and the Nissa, but yeah, can't quite take out the Advocate. The Goblin Dark Dwellers can hit a Fiery Impulse or a Magmatic Insight, but still, we're not quite there. And Jerry, that's just the textbook draw Jerry wants. 2-drop Nissa Gideon. That alone is going to beat most of Alexander's hands. We'll see if he can assemble it in Game 3, because it looks like we're going to have one.
Alexander just looking at his options, seeing if there's any way that he can survive this turn, but with 2 lethal threats and a Nissa sitting back there as well, it's going to be very hard.
And here, Alexander's cards did not line up very well against Jerry's. I mean, Fiery Impulse, it's a fine card to have in your opening hand. In fact, that's where you want Fiery Impulse a lot of the time. Jerry didn't play a good target for basically the entire game. It was reduced to killing tokens that the Planeswalkers made with their 0 abilities or +1 abilities.
I don't see any way out of this for Alexander, and he scoops up Game 2. We're going to go to a Game 3 here in this semifinals. Second match between Jerry Thompson and Alexander Ivanov. This is standard. We'll see if the players want to change their sideboards a little bit for on the play versus on the draw. All right, looks like Alexander is happy to just resubmit.
Yeah, Jerry's looking at his board, deciding whether he wants these like Nissa Vastwood Seers, but again, I think both players kind of have the plan. This isn't quite the same as Modern, when you have like a ton of like one-ofs and cards you're really tweaking your list with, whereas in Standard, they have plans for this matchup. These are both well-known matchups, and the card variation within those matchups is not huge.
Looks like some Vastwood Seers he's looking at in the sideboard.
Yeah, and one of the risks of Den Protector, which is why Jerry has sided them out, is that if you playing Den Protector into a Fiery Impulse Kozilek's Return deck is just not very appealing. Jerry just has those Secure the Wastes instead for an end-of-turn threat and is maxed out on Declaration of Stone to kill a Tarka and Worldbreaker.
All right, it looks like the players are ready for their game 3. So let's see if either Jerry Thompson can win this game and win the series, or if Alexander can even it off and force a match 3.
Well, Alexander has a hand without green mana. Drownyard Temple is making him pay the price there. And the second hand is not exciting, but I would imagine pretty close to keepable. Just it's got Traverse, a green land, and a red land, and then you get to Scry. Jerry also mulliganed and might consider mulligan to 5. Neither player's hands are going to be great right now.
Oof. Yeah, even if Jerry was to draw planes off the top, Secure the Waste for such a small number is not ideal, but we'll see what these players want to do.
Jerry's still deciding whether he wants to mulligan. Alexander has kept his hand, and Jerry's going to keep and scry an Archangel Avacyn to the bottom.
All right, and we're off. So Traverse here, just going to find a land for Alexander. Pop out these graveyards for you. Looks like he found a mountain.
Well, if Alexander can draw a ramp spell, like a Nissa's Pilgrimage would be perfect, then I think he's in really good shape. Because Jerry does not have the kind of draw that can pressure Chandra. But both players are kind of in the spot where they can't cast very many spells, and if Alexander doesn't draw a ramp spell and just ends up saying go for a few turns, this could not work out well. Though Draconic Roar, pretty decent draw. By waiting, Alexander risks getting hit by Dramoka's command, but looks like he's content just to sit here and maybe take the damage.
Oh, geez, actually, this Draconic Roar is going to turn on Spell Mastery for the Fiery Impulse in Alexander's hand.
And that'll make the second Sylvan Advocate not the best play for Jerry.
Currently, the only thing he can do besides develop out that third forest, though.
Yeah, he certainly has to play it. It's just not going to work out very well.
Yeah, and we'll see the end of turn Fiery Impulse on that Sylvan Advocate. Of course, 3 damage now that Spell Mastery is active.
And of course, it looks like Alexander might not need a ramp spell to play Chandra. He might just play Chandra on turn 6.
If Jerry was going to draw a card that he could cast that was decent, Nissa was probably one of the top ones there.
All right. Now 5 lands. Is Alexander going to be able to play one of these Chandras? If Jerry draws a Plains here, or a white source, Jerry could be in really good shape. He could start setting up a Secure the Waste to make more Nissa tokens. So Jerry just needs to draw an untapped Plains, and then he can threaten Chandra pretty effectively. If he doesn't draw an untapped Plains, if he just draws another white card, then the ball's really in Alexander's court.
All right, and the draw Canopy Vista off the top for Jerry Thompson.
All right, so this is a big turn. Jerry wants to set up Secure the Waste. The question is, he could main phase Secure and then Nissa, but I think that that seems way too risky into a potential Chandra. So by passing the turn, Alexander needs to draw an untapped land to play Chandra. If he does, then Jerry has a Secure the Waste. If Alexander draws, looks like Alexander's going to kill the 2 tokens and try to set up Chandra +1 kill the Nissa.
Of course, this is reliant on Alexander drawing an untapped land for the turn, so we'll see if that is actually going to be the case here. Probably doesn't feel too good to fall at the Titan's 2 plant tokens.
No, so untapped land. Oh, Tormenting Voice. So not what Alexander wanted, but by snap discarding Chandra, Jerry has to assume that Alexander's other card in hand is an expensive card. There's just no way you discard Chandra on 5 lands unless that is the worst card in your hand.
It does find another Tormenting Voice and a Fiery Impulse. That Tormenting Voice discarding the Fiery Impulse. And there's his 6th land, including a Draconic Roar as well.
So Jerry, again in the spot where I think if Jerry draws an untapped white source, he's in a very good shape. A third Declaration of Stone. Ooh.
That's not very good versus Alexander's current hand.
No, it's in fact quite poor, especially since Jerry can now minus Nissa and attack for 6, but then Alexander goes Chandra, wipe your board, and Jerry's follow-up is almost nothing, whereas if he drew an untapped Plains, he could just play Archangel Avacyn to kill the Chandra and make his whole team indestructible. The whole game was in that draw step, and it's going to be close from here on out, but Alexander, I think, is now sizably ahead.
Interesting points here. Nissa, in fact, going to go ahead and put a counter on each of Jerry's creatures. Get a good look at Nissa there. Battling in for 6 points of damage, Alexander falls to 14. Another forest off the top. And here we see Chandra, Flame Caller.
So Alexander can try and kill Nissa. He can by +1ing and just attacking Nissa. He can also just minus to kill the soldiers. Minusing to kill the soldiers is certainly the most appealing play, just because you don't lose your Chandra. If you +1 Chandra, you end up losing Chandra. So I'm assuming that he's going to just -2 here. Again, had Jerry drawn a white source, it looks like he's -3ing to just to make sure Dromoko's command can't save any of them. Had Jerry drawn a white source, Avacyn would have just basically ended the game here.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, Jerry's going to have to hope to draw it this turn.
Another forest is not what he's looking for.
This is brutal. Jerry really needs a white source.
And given that Jerry's not done anything, do you just Draconic Roar the plant token to kill Nissa here?
That seems like it's something that Alexander should consider. Alexander's really all in on this Chandra, too. The game is definitely not over.
Alexander does have access to potentially 8 lands here, but he's going to go ahead and uptick Chandra, put in 2 3/1 elemental tokens with haste.
And it looks like he's not interested in killing the plant token.
Both elementals are going to go over on Nissa's way. Plant jumps in front of the elemental, and Nissa falls to 1 loyalty. We'll see what Jerry can draw up here.
I think Jerry's still in good shape if he draws a plains. Or a castable spell, potentially, depending on what the spell is.
Westville Abbey.
Oh, and he didn't play his land last turn, and now he can't activate Westvale Abbey.
Which would have saved Nissa.
Which is actually huge here. So by holding a land to potentially conceal what he had from Alexander, he's unable to activate Westvale Abbey here. So this is tough.
And Jerry can just do nothing but pass the turn with 3 Declaration in Stone and an Archangel Avacyn in hand. All right, Fiery Impulse off the top for Alexander, who's going to continue producing elemental tokens here. And this one is finally going to threaten to just get rid of Nissa.
Yeah, so Jerry's not even going to block if he can't save Nissa. So Alexander's now he has the opportunity to use Chandra 0 and draw 5 or 6 new cards, which that should put the game firmly in his favor.
Ugh, another double white card here for Jerry, who can play that forest, but activating Westvale Abbey is not too favorable in this position.
Yeah, Jerry has 5 uncastable spells in hand, and he's had them for the majority of the game, which is not a great place to be in Standard, or pretty much any format.
All right, another land off the top. Let's see if Alexander actually wants to use a removal spell here on the plant token before using Chandra 0. Of course, get a good look at Chandra there again. Flame Caller. Discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards +1.
Yeah, so even if Alexander misses on his draw step here, which he did, he drew a forest, he gets to draw 6 new cards now, which really tilts the game in his favor.
Looks like he's going to play a Game Trail here first. And then potentially draw 5 new cards. And that is indeed the case. And what do we see here?
Well, that should be enough to put the game away for Alexander, because he gets to World Breaker Jerry's Canopy Vista here.
Oof.
And Jerry is unlikely to be able to cast another spell. He has to draw a white source and then hope to Declaration the World Breaker, but still not really be able to. And of course, Fortified Village is why he kept the forest 2 turns ago, though that made him unable to Westvale Abbey when he drew the Westvale Abbey. So keeping the forest seems much better, but it just ends up now mocking him as he then draws the Fortified Village.
Pyromancer's Goggles, the draw now for Alexander, who's quickly taking over this game with the more expensive, powerful cards in the red-green Goggles ramp deck. Remember, if Alexander wins this one, we are going to go to a match 3 between these two players. We looked at their decks previously, and it's going to be the format of Legacy. All right, looks like Alexander's going to use -1 on Chandra to take care of the lowly creatures on Jerry T's side. And World Breaker is going to break some worlds.
Yeah, there's not that many haste creatures that Alexander has to worry about. Secure the Waste is the big one, but of course Jerry doesn't have any white mana, so he's unable to cast it this turn.
Sylvan Advocate is a 4/5 currently, but given the board position and the hands, well, we know that Jerry is way back.
So Jerry's going to be able to, he still gets to play some spells here. He gets to go Declaration of Stone, your World Breaker, play a Sylvan Advocate, but next turn Alexander gets to go Atarka, your Sylvan Advocate, 0 Chandra, or plus Chandra, and just try to set up a 1-turn clock.
He even gets to sacrifice the clue here end of turn off of the declaration. Oh, and copying the fiery impulse to take care of the Sylvan Advocate. So this might mean he wasn't planning on casting a Tarka next turn, or
Presumably.
drown your temple to draw. Yeah, it looks like he's just going to cast out a Tarka, then probably draw a new set of cards.
I think he might actually just +1 Chandra just because he's putting Jerry under. I guess either way it's a 1-turn clock, so just drawing 5 is better.
Magmatic Insight, Mountain,
Draw.
Tireless Tracker.
Draw 4 more with Magmatic Insight.
Copying it off of the Pyromancer's goggles. Seems pretty good. The red Ancestral of sorts. Of course, you guys can read the goggles there. And passes the turn to Jerry, who can start using, again, these declarations in stone, which aren't bad, but...
Oh yeah, they're paying off big time now. Jerry has to use them. He's able to keep a Tarka at bay, make a Nissa, but Alexander's drawing so many cards. Alexander can almost draw through his whole deck right now. He could copy Tormenting Voice with goggles, draw 4, and then Chandra to draw 10 cards. So if you really wanted to, I don't think it's even going to be necessary.
Yeah, if you guys take a look at the deck, the cards in each player's deck, Jerry has 42 currently. Alexander with only 18 left. He has sifted and drawn through so much off of Chandra and the other draw effects, Magmatic Insight and Tormenting Voice. And the Tarka's pretty good here. Gets to take out Nissa and the plant token. We're going to probably see another turn where Jerry's going to declaration the Dragon Lord Tarka and hope to draw a white source. Oh, but a Fall of the Titans off the top is probably going to just end it on that next turn.
Yeah, even if Jerry is able to kill a Tarka, there's no real way for him to come back here.
Oath of Nissa the draw. That's going to let Jerry cast Gideon Alaviv's Zendikar, but we know the writing's on the wall and it's much too late for that. In fact, Dragon Lord Atarka lethal by herself.
Yeah, and Jerry didn't find a land, so he's not able to cast Declaration plus Gideon at the same time, so he's going to have to settle for Hangerback and then Declaration the Atarka.
All right, and just like that, it looks like Alexander Ivanov is going to even up the matches versus Jerry Thompson, 1-1, and we're going to soon go to a third match in this semifinals, although we're playing Legacy. Tireless Tracker to play, and of course, Fall of the Titans in conjunction with Pyromancer's goggles. I'm not going to count, but I'm going to assume it's around 3,000 damage.
I don't know how much 3,000 is exactly, but I guess we'll find out.
No, 3,000 doesn't sound as good. Alexander Ivanov is going to take the match here over Jerry Thompson. Now remember, we still have one more match left in this semifinals where they're going to be playing Legacy. We saw Jerry will be playing Shardless Sultai, and Alexander is on what again?
Alexander is on Punishing Loam Green Sun
right.
Zenith.
Welcome back to the booth here, friends, at Magic Online Championships. I'm Ken Jagashira here with Luis Scott Vargas. And remember, whoever wins the next match will be going to the finals here. Well, they're going to face off Niels Norlander to decide who is this year's Magic Online champion.
Yeah, and we're going to see Jerry on the play here with his Shardless Sultai deck playing against Alexander with the Punishing Loam deck.
It looks like we actually have an interview with Alexander. Let's go down there now and see what BDM has to ask him.
Thanks, Kenji. I'm here with Alexander Ivanov. Alexander, your hands were shaking after that match. Tell me what was going through your head as you played out that match in Standard.
It was really... I'm really nervous. It was really a great match. It was pretty close. You know, it's... I just need to draw more cards. I draw only lands, but what helps me? Gary didn't draw second. I think didn't draw second white land, and he can't cast most of spells in his hand, and this helps me. And I at last cast Chandra, then draw cards, then and after I continue drawing, I won.
Okay, what can we look forward to from you in modern? I mean, in our last format in Legacy. Yes, what can we look forward to in Legacy?
What I play? I play 4-color loam deck. It's a pretty good deck, but I don't have I don't have more practice. I don't haven't more practice this deck, but I think it's will be good matches, good games.
All right, well, good games the rest of the way here in this semifinal as you fight for one of 2 slots here in the finals of the Magic Online Championship.
And welcome back to the booth here at the Magic Online Championship. Marshall Sutcliffe back in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas. And, exciting match 3 conclusion between these two players. It's going to head into Legacy. That's the only choice left, so they have to play Legacy. What are we looking at here, Luis?
So we're looking at Jerry on Shardless Sultai. He's going to face off against Alexander Ivanov on the 4-color loam deck with Punishing Fires. So Jerry here is running a value deck. We're going to see this isn't like when we saw 2 sneak and show decks face against each other. We're not going to see any turn 2 kills. We're not going to see Emrakul attacking. At least I don't think so. No Emrakul's here. Just got to double check. Jerry.
We finally have a match without Emrakul.
But we're going to see a lot of cards trading. You're going to see Abrupt Decay killing Tarmogoyfs. We're going to see Chalice of the Void trying to shut off Ancestral Vision. See Shardless Agent getting a 2-for-1, maybe a 4-for-1 if you can pick up that vision. So it's a lot of attrition. And if we want to take a look at Alexander's deck, he's going to try to attack Jerry's mana base. You see 4 Wastelands there, and Knight of the Reliquary, which can fetch up more of them. This is kind of like a lands deck that has a bunch of other spells in it, so instead of the Exploration and Mana Bond engines, it's got Knight of the Reliquary, Dark Confidant, and Green Sun Zenith. So it's a lot of different engines kind of packed into one deck, and it should be interesting watching these 2 decks face against each other. The games are going to be pretty complicated. This is not an easy matchup to play.
And there's a lot on the line, of course, for these players. You know, just to zoom out a little bit here, we have a minute until the players are ready to play, Luis. This is going into the 3rd match of our second semifinal. I know that sounds kind of weird, but we're actually playing multiple matches per semifinal to determine our winner, and they get to play each of the constructed rounds, assuming that it goes to 3. If not, they only play 2 matches, and they only get to play 2 of them. But this is the 3rd, and that means that in this case, it ended up being Legacy. That was because the players actually had a choice on what to play first and second.
Right. Jerry's chose to kick off with Modern. Alexander chose to play Standard, and now they're in Legacy.
Right, and now they're in Legacy. And the winner of this match, they're going to get a seat in the finals. Now, Niels Norlander awaits them, and we're going to run that same thing back again. The higher-seeded player is going to get to pick which format they play first. Then the other player is going to pick the second, and if necessary, the 3rd format will be played. $25,000 for first place. Now, you still get $17,000 for second, so that's nothing small. But those bullet points at the bottom catapult first place up into, near Pro Tour level prize quality here.
Definitely. Platinum status is already worth a ton in terms of prestige and money. And then being invited to this year's Worlds is the best tournament to play in, I firmly believe. And then next year's Magic Online Championship. So we've got huge prizes for first. Second place is taking away $17,000. So these players are playing for a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. And the players are ready. Let's head down to the feature match area for the 3rd match of our second semifinal. And welcome back to coverage of the Magic Online Championship. So, Alexander Ivanov on the right-hand side versus Jerry Thompson. People know him as Jerry T.
Well, how do you get to Jerry T from Jerry Thompson?
Well, we actually call him Terry Johnson, but so that's a whole different thing. All right. And we are underway in Legacy. So let's take a look here. You talked about the matchup a minute ago for the live stream, Luis, but for those who are watching else, I didn't really get a sense from you who you felt was favored between the two.
That's because these decks are complicated enough, and the matchup is unique enough that I don't know that there's a clear favorite here.
Okay.
Maybe there is one, but I haven't extensively tested the 4-color Punishing Fire Green Sun Zenith Loam deck against the Shardless Sultai deck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fair enough. So we see that Alexander has taken a mulligan here on the bottom. He's also on the draw, and Jerry Thompson's going to grab a notepad because Thoughtseize is on the stack.
I can tell you who's favored in this game if you'd like.
Jerry.
Yes.
He did not mulligan.
Alexander mulligan and kept a hand which has 5 mana sources in it. Mox Diamond, of
Oh,
course,
no.
providing mana as well, even though it's not a land.
And that's going to be his whole hand, right?
It is.
Chalice goes away.
And we're going to assume Jerry's going to take the Chalice here. Though the saving grace for Alexander is he's got a Barren Moor, which cycles. That's a cycling land in the middle of his hand there for 1 black mana. And Wasteland, which he can sack to destroy that Underground Sea. So if he destroys Underground Sea, there's a chance Jerry just doesn't draw another land. But it's still, right now, it's looking good for Jerry because he's got a good 2-drop in Tarmogoyf and he's got a good 3-drop in Shardless Agent.
Yeah, it is interesting. His deck is a little mana hungry. At least this draw is, with a couple of 3-drops, a 2-drop, and a 4 in hand.
Well, actually, never mind. This is a great draw for Alexander that he potentially scried to the top. Dark Confidant. So he's going to get to...
Just play it right now.
Yeah, he gets to play a land, play a Mox Diamond, and then play a Dark Confidant on turn 1. So that definitely tilts the scales in Alexander's favor.
Jerry's going to be able to deal that with Toxic Deluge in a turn or 2 here, but not next turn, so...
And once you have a Dark Confidant in play, Wastelanding is so much more powerful because you're getting extra cards every turn.
Jerry did draw a Brainstorm for the turn, so he's going to be faced with the decision on whether to Brainstorm to try to find an answer for Dark Confidant if he has them, or play Tarmogoyf.
Jerry does not have very many 1-mana spells in his deck, and certainly none that can kill Dark Confidant.
Okay.
So he's going to just cast the Tarmogoyf, I believe.
Yeah, you're correct. And here comes the first of what could be many Dark Confidant flips.
Oh, wow. Alexander's draw is developed incredibly well. He gets to Wasteland, one of Jerry's lands, and Abrupt Decay the Tarmogoyf. Meanwhile, just getting value off of this Dark Confidant. Alexander also could play a Chalice of the Void for 1 if you wanted to shut off Jerry's Brainstorms and potential Deathrite Shamans, but Jerry doesn't have as many 1-mana spells as some of the other blue decks, so it's not quite as enticing as maybe just casting Abrupt Decay and getting to attack for 2.
Do you have a sense for how well known Alexander Ivanov's deck is in Legacy?
Well, Jerry's aware of it, I would assume.
He'll have a good idea what's going on. He has the deck list as it sits.
He does. Yeah. And it is a played deck. It's one I've seen before.
Okay.
So looks like Alexander is going to go with the Chalice of the Void.
So Wasteland, take out Underground Sea, and then follow up with Chalice is the play?
So Jerry now has no castable spells in hand. He's got a 1-drop he can't cast because of Chalice, and he's got 2 3s and a 4-drop. So Jerry's actually in a ton of trouble here.
So Tarmogoyf or bust here for Jerry Thompson, and he's drawn another one, but all he can do is attack with Tarmogoyf and pass the turn back. Wow, this draw has really come together well for Alexander. It looked so bad after that Thoughtseize, and then boom, Dark Confidant changed all of it.
It was a 5-land hand after the Thoughtseize, but Dark Confidant gives you a ton of extra value.
And now we're going to see, looks like an Abrupt Decay is going to take out the Tarmogoyf and even allow Dark Confidant to start attacking. So Jerry's just begging to see a string of lands off the top of his library at this point.
If Jerry plays a land in a Tarmogoyf, Alexander then gets to flip off Dark Confidant and play a Knight of the Reliquary. That could be a lot better.
Baleful Strix. Certainly not what Jerry wants to see here.
Gedok Teague also a card that can shut off cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor or Force of Will. But right now, Alexander's not particularly worried about those. And the thing is, Jerry hasn't even drawn any of those cards that end up, giving him a mana advantage here. So this is gonna be a tough one for Jerry to win.
And he doesn't. He's going to give up. Couldn't find that last land. And Alexander Ivanov is now potentially 1 game away. If he wins the next game, he's going to find himself in the finals of the Magic Online Championship. And he is going to run it up against Niels Norlander, who patiently awaits.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten a sense of which of these players Niels would rather face because it's just very deck dependent.
And there's 3 different matchups to consider.
Right, so
yeah,
it is pretty complicated. But step 1 for Jerry is certainly to win these next 2 games, whereas Alexander is just looking to hopefully improves deck enough post board that he doesn't have to play a third game. I mean, Alexander does have Choke, which is a very powerful card. Looks like he put in a Garrick Relentless as well. Whereas Jerry, not a lot of changes he wants to make here. Disfigure is good at killing Dark Confidant, but you don't want tons of Disfigure because you don't have other things to kill. And then you, of course, have to worry about Chalice of the Void. Jerry looking at his Baleful Strix and his Sylvan libraries here. I like he's got one Sylvan in main, one Sylvan in board, one Strix main, 3 Strix board, one Disfigure main, one board.
Just fine-tuning the dials on this thing. Ivanov pretty quick on the sideboards generally, and you can see he's already submitted his deck. All right, and both players all ready to go for this potentially deciding game between Jerry Thompson and Alexander Ivanov. Let's take a look at their openers and see what we're looking at here. Well, looks a little rough for Jerry again,
not a
doesn't
great draw
it?
from Jerry. He
He's
ends up
gonna mulligan.
mulliganing. I would imagine you keeping this 6-card hand. You get to scry, hopefully scry a land on top, and then you just go land Goyf. You also have Force of Will to kind of keep whatever Alexander's first play is off the board. Alexander's opening hand is not fantastic, though. He has
Okay.
Punishing Fire, Grove of the Burn Willows, but Punishing Fire doesn't do a great job against killing Tarmogoyf, and he can't actually cast Knight of the Reliquary. He only has red, green, and black lands so far. So besides the double Punishing Fire and the Abrupt Decay, Alexander doesn't have a whole lot else. He's got Wasteland, which is good against Jerry's land light hands.
Yeah, Jerry really just needs to find a lot of lands because that Tarmogoyf is probably going to get killed by him by an Abrupt Decay at some point here, and he's going to need follow-ups. Okay, well, now things get interesting. You can see his Brainstorm has found himself a Polluted Delta and a Thoughtseize. That means that he can shuffle away a couple of cards that he doesn't want, or one of them, and he can also Thoughtseize, or he can just play the Tarmogoyf like he had planned.
So Jerry's likely going to want to shuffle a Shardless Agent or Maelstrom Pulse, like one of the 3-mana spells,
Okay.
and then keep the other one. And then whether he wants to play Thoughtseize or Tarmogoyf here is interesting. With Force of Will in hand, I would be slightly more inclined, I think, just to play Tarmogoyf. But unfortunately for Jerry, you can't Force of Will Abrupt Decay. The spell is uncounterable.
Right. But I think that, Jerry wouldn't be super bummed, right, if the play for the turn is to play a land and just kill your Tarmogoyf. That gives Jerry a lot of hope. He can Thoughtseize on his turn at the minimum. He's also drawing life for a land here.
Jerry really wants Alexander not to wasteland him here. He doesn't know Alexander has a
Yes,
wasteland, but Jerry's
that's
got
the key.
double Shardless Agent. If he just draws a land and can play a Shardless Agent, he is in much better shape. So yeah, Jerry has got an opportunity here. Because if he doesn't draw a land this turn, first of all, he doesn't have a third land. Second of all, Alexander's going to take the opportunity to use wasteland.
Totally. Now, that was a nice one, too, here for Jerry. I'm sure he would have preferred just to find a land and start playing Shardless Agents, but Brainstorm gives him a pretty good chance of finding them, and it lets him still use that Thoughtseize for the turn while being mana efficient here. So, Thoughtseize you.
Brainstorm's actually a great draw because it lets him brainstorm and then hopefully find lands and then set up the second card down to hit with Shardless Agent. So if Jerry can brainstorm, he's going to take the Knight of the Reliquary and then be left with just 2 Punishing Fires on the other side. He knows. Well, he does know. He does, I think, assume that he's going to get wastelanded. So
Yeah, so he may need to find multiple lands here.
well,
if possible.
one thing that's kind of interesting that Jerry could do is he could not take Knight of the Reliquary. He could take a Punishing Fire to try to induce Alexander to cast Knight instead of using Wasteland. Then you Force of Will the Knight, then play a Shardless
Now,
Agent.
if you're Alex, you would just be dumbfounded if that was the case, though, right?
Yeah, that is a very bizarre play.
Now, how difficult would it be, though? Let's say that you were sitting in Alexander's seat, and that happened. Would you eventually come to the conclusion that it was all about that wasteland, that was what he was? Because it's so tempting just to play Knight of the Reliquary.
I think so, because
there.
taking Punishing Fire is just so baffling when you have a Grove of the Burn Willows in your hand
Uh-huh.
already. So I think that even if Jerry...
He did. He took
Yeah.
a Punishing Fire.
I think that's it's a gamble, but I could see it paying off for Jerry.
Okay. Here's a third copy of Shardless Agent, but he did also find a land in that pile.
So now Jerry puts back 2 Shardless Agents and then plays his land and passes the turn.
And then he's looking to just draw one of the Shardless Agents and then crack the fetch land.
Oh, this is disastrous for Jerry because Alexander drew a 2-mana play, so now he gets to play the 2-mana play and play Wasteland if he wants. Oh, but he's not going to do it. He's just going to run the Knight of the Reliquary. All right, Jerry.
Wow, so Jerry's plan is working here.
Jerry's gamble worked off.
He gets to counter the Knight.
And now he gets to draw Shardless Agent,
shuffle, I'm assuming. I guess it doesn't.
Well,
I guess he
to
has
shuffle.
to shuffle just to
And-
cast
and then
it.
just cast a Shardless
Cast
Agent.
it. Okay. So Ancestral Vision, would that be the best thing for him to hit?
Oh, for sure. He's just really hoping to hit Vision here.
Let's see what he hits.
Well, that's actually really good too.
Sylvan Library. Okay, a little slower.
It's slower.
But
It's
it's
not
a
quite as
steady
good as
source.
Ancestral Vision, but it's still a bunch of extra cards.
And Jerry still has in his hand an extra
Shardless Agent.
Shardless Agent. Now, even if he gets Wastelanded, he could probably find a land with Sylvan Library and then just cast another Shardless Agent. So, wow, that was a really cool play from Jerry to try to entice Alexander into playing the Knight, and he did. It worked.
Yeah, if I feel like it's there's a lot of layers of information there, and Alexander just ended up going for the Knight. So Alexander now likely going to want to Punishing Fire and play Dark Confidant here.
So just take down the Shardless Agent and get a card draw engine of his own on the battlefield.
Yeah, and Jerry gets to set up the Punishing Fire with, or rather, the Shardless Agent with his Sylvan Library. It is annoying for Jerry that Punishing Fire is getting his Shardless Agents, though.
Mm-hmm. But after seeing two of them in hand,
There's an Ancestral Vision. It's perfect, because now Jerry can Sylvan
he gets to put
Library.
it back?
He can put back a land in an Ancestral Vision, and he can put the Ancestral Vision second down, so then he can just play Shardless Agent and then play Ancestral Vision.
Get rid of one of the lands as well, and then get an Ancestral Vision. Wow. All right, here it is. Ancestral Vision. What does he find? Okay, another copy of it, also a Maelstrom Pulse and a Force of Will.
And I think Jerry's just going to keep the Vision to pitch to Force, because at this point...
It's just better at this
Yeah.
point, timing-wise. Okay, and a couple of, well, I don't know if you'd call them hits or not. He didn't take any damage, but he's basically found a few more mana sources. So no action. And is Jerry just going to Maelstrom Pulse the Dark Confidant at the earliest opportunity? And
Definitely. Though Jerry is in a bit of trouble here. He doesn't have a really good way of getting rid of those Punishing Fires. He doesn't even have a Scavenging Ooze. So in order for Jerry to be able to deal with those, he needs to find a Wasteland for the Grove of the Burn Willows.
And that still necessitates Alexander not finding a Life from the Loam at some point.
Correct. Or another Grove.
Right.
Because otherwise, Alexander getting back 2 Punishing Fires a turn is just going to be too much for Jerry.
Jerry's at 15 life. He will have some amount of time to work through this, but he doesn't have forever. Dropping down to 13 from the Dark Confidant attack. Land plus. Land.
Well, there's the Wasteland.
Oh,
though.
and he found the Wasteland.
And Jerry gets to put back. So now he has a fetch land in place. So he's just going to put back the 2 lands. He's going to Wasteland the Grove. He's going to use a fetch and Maelstrom Pulse the Dark Confidant. So Jerry...
And have Force of Will up?
Yeah, Jerry. I think Jerry's in really good shape here. There's a lot of cards Alexander could draw that would be tough for Jerry to deal with. But right now, Jerry is ahead. He gets to, especially since he gets to see 2 extra cards a turn on Sylvan, 3 cards total.
Yeah, using that Misty Rainforest at some point here will shuffle away the lands he put back. Library fight?
Well, I think Jerry's going to Force of Will the Sylvan Library here because it's such a big threat right now. With Alexander at 20 life, letting him have access to so many extra cards.
Sure. But we're back down to ground zero for both players, except for one has a Sylvan Library and the other doesn't, and that is just massive.
Yeah. And Jerry gets to fetch end of turn because he knows 2 of the 3 cards are lands.
Yep.
He could choose to draw them to see what the 3rd card is, but I think just finding 3 new cards is just going to be so appealing
He
here.
wants action.
Well, that's not.
Now,
not
does that count
great.
as action?
Not really. He knows about a Punishing Fire, which can kill 1 Deathrite. He could pay life and just play both Deathrites, and then just hope that one of the Deathrites sticks, and then start eating those Sylvan or the Punishing Fires. So.
Okay, it looks like that's what his plan is. He knows that one of them's going to get killed, but he's really limiting the window here for Alexander to find a way to get those Punishing Fires out of his graveyard and start sniping the.
Yeah, he just needs
Grove
Alexander
here.
to miss for a turn or 2.
Well,
not
Alex
happening yet.
did not miss here. He actually found a Liliana of the Veil, which does give him access to creature kill and is going to protect the Punishing Fires in the yard. So he'll minus Liliana here and pass the turn. Wow, this has been a sweet game.
So Jerry gets to see 2 new cards. If Jerry could find like a Jace, that'd be very good for him.
Now, a Tarmogoyf is going to be huge. It's going to be 6/7, 5/6,
Yeah,
something like that.
This is still quite good for Jerry. He gets to play a Tarmogoyf. That was a very good draw, and he's got the exact turn window before Liliana gets too big. Jerry has a decision here, though. He wants to take Tarmogoyf. The question is, do you also take Misty Rainforest, which then lets you shuffle away that Ancestral Visions, or just see basically you get to see 3 new cards or 2 new cards next turn.
Yeah.
But in exchange, you're paying 4 life. You only get to do that one more time.
And that is the tough decision that Jerry's faced with here.
Jerry could, if you really wanted to, take Ancestral Vision, but I just don't think that the game is just moving too fast for that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it looks like Jerry's going to go for it. He's going to try to play the long game here. He certainly has to take the Tarmogoyf, but taking the Vision too. I'm interested to see how this develops.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on the Vision up here. Those are the 4 counters that will be taken off every upkeep for him. Jerry has no cards in hand, so Liliana the Veil's not going to make him discard anything of consequence.
Or anything at all.
Indeed.
Alexander doesn't even need to plus Liliana because, if he doesn't plus Liliana, Tarmogoyf could just attack him. And the Mox Diamond isn't doing a whole lot. Oh, he's choosing to discard the Wasteland on Mox Diamond. Interesting. There's got to be some temptation to
just go
double waste the Chop
Yeah.
and the Bayou, putting Jerry to no green sources.
For sure. I'm surprised he didn't do that. There's a Jace the Mind Sculptor, Luis.
All right, so now Jerry gets to attack Liliana, then Jason plus Jace on Alexander, because Jerry doesn't need to draw extra cards this turn. They don't help him, and he knows his top 2 cards are lands, but plussing it on Alexander can really give him a leg up here. Alexander now has to hit 2 action cards in a row to get back into this.
All right, he's going to plus. What does he see on top of the library?
He's
We can't see it here,
Maelstrom Pulse, which he put on the
Okay.
bottom. Alexander then draws a Scrubland.
So just like Jerry T wrote it up. And then he'll switch gears with Jace and start brainstorming at some point here?
It's going to depend on what he sees off the Sylvan. Part of the problem is that a lot of the cards he could draw don't stop Alexander's best draws, like Grove of the Burn Willows or Life from the Loam. So Jerry has incentive to just keep plussing, because that each plus success that's successful buys him an extra turn.
And it's all lands on top for Jerry. Is he worried about going from 3 to 2 life? Does that matter here?
It definitely does if Alexander just draws a Punishing Fire, though he only has 3 Punishing Fires in the deck, so there's only one Punishing Fire left.
Okay. Tarmogoyf, I think, is up to 7-8. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's 7-8.
Yeah, that's the biggest Tarmogoyf I've ever seen, especially on a match we're covering.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know if our Tarmographic goes that big.
Yeah.
That's a 3-turn clock, though. It is actually quite relevant here. Bang, bang, bang versus 6, 12, 18 plus another hit.
So Jerry's plus 1ing or plus 2ing Jace on Alexander and seeing Toxic Deluge, which is interesting. So Jerry could attack Alexander down to 13, and then he would have to pay 8 life to kill that Tarmogoyf and go down to 5, but then there wouldn't be a Tarmogoyf in play. So Jerry attacks for 7.
Yeah, but it's crazy. But it's also like a draw that's safe, right?
Yeah.
Like Jerry knows that that's not going to kill him. And remember, Ancestral Vision is now down to 2. So every turn that Jerry buys for himself is getting closer and closer to that. And you have to figure that if that Ancestral Vision resolves, that Jerry's going to win the game.
Well, again, some of Alexander's best draws, like Grove of the Burn Willows, are not counterable and hard to interact with. So I don't think that Jerry is a lock to win, even if the Ancestral resolves. But Jerry's
never a lock.
Jerry's a huge favorite here.
Right. Okay. Oh. Shardless Agent.
That's a great draw
He's
because
gonna
now he
put
can
2
put the
lands
2
to get
lands
rid
back.
of those away.
Yeah, he can just cast Shardless Agent and see what he hits. He could also do something with Jace, but I still think plussing is a pretty good strategy
He
here.
needs one more turn of no hits from Alexander to be able to get that Ancestral Vision on the stack and get a bunch of cards in hand for him. And he's going to hit something with his Shardless Agent as well. So he's going to hit this first before using his Jace to see what he gets. And it's a Brainstorm. And he's found another Tarmogoyf.
All right, so now you definitely just plus Alexander, and he's got one draw step that you get to Fate Seal first to do something, and it's going to be a Wasteland.
And it was a Wasteland that he saw?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to be game then.
Yep.
Wasteland is not going to get the job done for Alexander Ivanov. And we had a little more legacy here.
Wow,
The full sweat. That was
quite
an
the
intense game.
Both those games were pretty absurd, and I want to go back to that Knight of the Reliquary play, where Jerry saw Knight of the Reliquary and 2 Punishing Fires. The Punishing Fires could come back with Grove of the Burn Willows and weren't even relevant right then. So you're assuming he's not going to take it, but then he starts thinking, and it's like, oh, he wants to take Punishing Fire to leave Knight in Alexander's hand so that next turn Alexander doesn't play Wasteland and instead plays Knight. You force a will Knight and then get to play your 3-drop, your Shardless Agent. And it worked out.
And it worked.
So that was
Crazy read from Jerry Thompson.
an above-the-rim play by Jerry Thompson.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly why I love watching Magic games. Like
Yeah.
plays like that, I think, are a really big part of it. So,
Those are also the plays, by the way, that I'm really glad you're in the booth for. Just saying. All right, so Jerry's going over his sideboard options here.
and Sylvan Library, despite its prowess last game, Jerry only has one of the 2 in his deck.
You know, while Jerry figures out the rest of it, so I am curious, how risky was that play? Like what if Alexander's just like, wasteland you anyway?
Or and the thing is,
You know, as
Alexander
it
even
turned out,
drew
he
Dark
kinda had a
Confidant.
bailout,
So it would
yeah.
it was I could see a natural play to go Dark Confidant Wasteland. I gotta say, it depends on your opponent. You really have to have a read on your
Gotta
opponent.
have the read.
You know, there are people who you make that play against them and they just start thinking, why did you do that?
Mhm.
And then they'll get to the Wasteland part of the equation.
Okay, so this is it. This is the game that's going to decide the entire thing. Who makes it to the finals?
And
Both players tied at a game apiece in Legacy. How do these hands look?
great hands for both players.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted you to
Yeah.
say.
Alexander's going to get to play turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Dark Confidant, and he's going to what he can do is take the Force of Will. Jerry's going to suspend a Visions, and then Alexander's going to play Dark Confidant. And if Jerry doesn't draw an answer to the Dark Confidant, it can run away with the game. If Jerry does, he's got a Vision suspended. Oh, Jerry mulliganed that hand. Wow. I would not have expected him to do that.
Okay, well, he's throwing us a curveball here in the booth. He's down to 6. That's a keep, though, right?
I would
Maybe?
assume so, but
You don't want to go out on a limb this time?
He apparently does not value Ancestral Visions. Maybe he's afraid of Chalice of the Void because that hand is very weak to it. But that's a tough mulligan.
Okay, well, he has kept the 6. And like you said, the first thing is going to be a Thoughtseize here from Alexander Ivanov. He's going to see a much different hand than the 7. But does he just take Ancestral Vision here and leave Jerry with 2 3-drops and a 4? Does he think longer term? And
I would
something
be
that was
tempted
more
to take
problematic
Ancestral
later?
because Jerry has 3 powerful cards, but getting to 3 mana is tough.
Yeah. We'll also note here that Ivanov has a Wasteland in his hand already.
One thing that
he's got 1 land to just take out.
One thing that Jerry doesn't know is that Ivanov does not have a black source if you Wasteland that Scrubland. So if Jerry's able to Wasteland Scrubland, then Ivanov might not be able to play anything for a while. And I think especially if Ivanov's in kind of the opposite position as last time.
Yeah.
He wants to take Ancestral, but if he takes Ancestral, then Jerry's way more likely to just Wasteland on turn 1. And so that could leave Ivanov in a position where he can't cast that Dark Confidant.
But still, Jerry has a 3, and a 4 in his hand. He doesn't want to just go Wasteland and leave himself with 1 land to go, right? It's pretty counter. Does that change things?
It does, but I'd still be I don't know. I would be inclined to Wasteland. Like if you're not doing anything for a bunch of turns.
He did it! Wasteland! All right,
Yeah.
this has been awesome.
Ivanov's probably going to draw a Mox Diamond here. But
He didn't.
He did not. But still, Ivanov is in good shape. He's in much better shape than Jerry because he gets to cycle Tranquil Thicket. If he finds an untapped black source, he gets to just play a Dark Confidant. And Jerry also is on 1 land with all expensive cards, and Ivanov has a Wasteland in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a tapped black source, but I think you just play it.
It looks like what Ivanov is thinking of, too, is just playing it, passing.
So Jerry just needs to draw. If Jerry
He
draws
needs lands.
All
He
right.
found one. Pluto Delta.
So the question is, do you play anything here? Playing Tarmogoyf gives you the upside of you have a Tarmogoyf in play. It gives you the downside of your lands are exposed to Wasteland. Here's where if Jerry had a Forest, it would be a little better. But the deck can't really afford to play Forest. But right now, the only basic in Jerry's deck is a Swamp. So it is tough.
So he's going to go ahead and play the Tarmogoyf.
If he's sacking now, he's going to play Tarmogoyf. Yes.
Right.
And then next turn, Ivanov has the play of Dark Confidant plus Wasteland. Because Ivanov also knows that Jerry has 2 3-drops in hand. There's no way he can let him untap with a land here.
Sure. And Jerry continually just wanting to find more and more lands off the top of his library. A Mox Diamond. for Ivanov. Does that open up any other options for him?
Not
Same play.
Really,
here.
he could Maelstrom Pulse, but I'd much rather just get a Tarmogoyf into play. I mean,
Get a
Maelstrom
Dark
Pulse
Confidant.
or Dark Confidant into play.
Mhm.
Maelstrom Pulse isn't unreasonable though. But yeah, he definitely has to cast Wasteland here.
Did you know that you don't cast lands?
I do.
Okay.
So Jerry
one of
is
the
still
keys
on the
to the
hook to draw lands. He didn't. So now Jerry
Wow.
can attack for 2, and that's it.
He did draw Force of Will, so he drew a castable spell.
Well, Force of Will is good because it lets Jerry counter that Maelstrom Pulse and maybe try to race with Tarmogoyf. It'll also go up to a 3/4 once the instant hits the yard. But Ivanov has a Dark Confidant in play. That's just bad news for Jerry. So Garruk Relentless was revealed.
He can play it.
Yeah, it's a little riskier to play the Garruk because Jerry could potentially just
I mean,
abrupt decay the token, and then attack Garruk. But it looks like Ivanov is going for it. This Tarmogoyf's going to be gigantic. Jerry's got another path to victory here. If he draws a second Force of Will, then Jerry is going to win with Tarmogoyf very easily.
so this is going to add instant and Planeswalker, jumping the Tarmogoyf up to a 4/5, and he's got a clock here. But he has to defend his Tarmogoyf, and the Maelstrom Pulses, well, it will kill it if Jerry doesn't find an answer. He doesn't. No land and no Force of
All
Will.
right. Well, Jerry's got a. The thing is, Jerry's alternate win condition of Dark Confidant flipping a bunch of cards, unlikely to work in the face of Punishing Fire. Oh wow, Thespian Stage plus Dark Depth.
He has a Dark Depths in his hand, and he just played a Thespian Stage last
He just
turn.
has one of each of those cards, and now he's going to get to. He can just immediately make a 20/20, and Jerry's deck just has no way to deal with it.
Wow. Incredible. Jerry does find the land, but it's too late.
Yeah, so Jerry.
This is going to be Alexander Ivanov making a Merit Lage token with Dark Depths. A lot of text on Dark Depths, but when those counters are gone, you get a 20/20. And that does it. Alexander Ivanov defeats Jerry Thompson, puts himself into the finals, and he is going to face off against Niels Norlander to see who's going to become our Magic Online Championship. That does it for the semis.